This conference will now be recorded.
All right, it's 6 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's 27 June 2024. We can please stand. Father, thank you for this day. Cover ourselves. We ask for guidance, leadership, and direction. What best is this city. We ask you to be each and every one of us. All right, at this time, are there any public comments?
Excuse me, no, sir, I don't have any.
Okay. Moving on to announcements from the mayor and council members. July 1st is the next planning and zoning meeting.
We actually will not have planning and zoning. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We did not have anything come up on that agenda.
July 2nd, that usually will be the bulk trash pickup day if everybody needs to know that. July 3rd is the outdoor morning siren test, weather permitting. We will. July 4th, the city office will be closed for the Independence Day holiday. July 9th, there will be hazardous waste pickup if you want to coordinate that with our trash. July 11th is our next city council meeting at 6 p.m. and July 25th, we will have another city council meeting at 6 p.m. Moving on, is there any other announcements from council? Moving on, the consent agenda. We have one item on there. Do we have any motions to accept the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Monthly staff reports. I believe we have a.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I appreciate y'all having me here to discuss this tonight. I gave you a copy of the traffic surveys done in Old Town at the request of Councilmember King, I believe. It's fairly self-explanatory. If you look, the first page in your handout is First Street, the second page is Second Street, third page is School Road. The analysis times basically ran a week in consecutive order. What we are mainly concerned about is the number of vehicles going through, and yes, we have seen an uptick in the number of vehicles traveling on those roadways. But if you'll look, the average speeds are within the speed limit. Two, on First Street and Second Street, as you might expect, the average speed is actually lower than the posted speed limit. And the number of vehicles that are outside the tolerance where citations would be issued, which in that area, if the speed limit is 25, citations will be issued at 36, is fairly low for the number of vehicles. So we're in good shape because of the results of these surveys. We are targeting our enforcement closer to the service road and BC Rhome. I know you guys have traveled through there and it is tough. We've gotten good feedback on our enforcement efforts, as well as the fact that those stop signs were placed on the other side of the bridge. I did speak to TxDOT recently. They asked my opinion on making those permanent. I have asked them to, yes, make them permanent so that we keep it symmetrical, if you will. And it's, I think what happened when you have a four-way stop on one side of a bridge and a two-way stop on the other, it throws people off. This will make them equal. When you go through one intersection, it's treated like the other intersection, which you would expect if you were traveling through there and not from here. It will add. We think when the new bridge is open, or the bridge is back open, we will see a decrease in traffic. That additional stop sign will slow down traffic a little bit going into Boyd, but not enough that we think it would. We think that the safety aspect overrides the slight inconvenience to the motoring public.
Chief, if you don't mind, when you're talking with TxDOT and as you're proceeding southbound, sort of southbound on 114 where we put in those new temporary ones, west, you've got the turn left and then you've got the yield to come across the bridge. If they could mark that a little bit better, because I see so many people going in the yield entrance, and that might be helpful. Just when you're talking with them, if we could bring that up.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can absolutely do that. Once they finish the bridge, and just to give you an update on the bridge, we've been told that they are going to pour the concrete on July 1st. So this next Monday, I believe, it is a 30-day cure. So you won't see much activity for 30 days, but then you will see them come in and pour the barriers along the edges. And then we're hoping that, I'm not going to give a date because I don't want to be held to it, but we're hoping it will come in under the date that we were expecting. I'll just leave it like that.
It'd be really nice if they could get that finished before school.
We are very.
That would be nice.
Yes. Exactly.
I understand. All right, Chief. Thank you very much.
Chief. I'm curious. Mayor Pro Tem lives on School Road, and I see that there's a considerable traffic over there. Have you heard from doing like three neighbors on that road?
And I've just heard them talk about how people speed through there, but I mean, it is what it is. You know, there's going to be people cutting through and trying to get back on BC Rome right there. I guess that's that direction they're going. So I'm not sure what else we can do about it.
So I, strangely enough, go home that direction, and one thing that I've noticed is there's not as many people coming off BC Rome or coming off of School Road trying to merge onto BC Rome. I think they've come to realize that some folks are not interested in letting them into the flow of traffic, and so they've chosen to go ahead and get in line and go through. So hopefully that will offer some relief. Back when these were being done, when I was going home, I saw more people kind of stacking up at that stop sign and hoping for someone to have grace and let them in. And a lot of people are not. They're getting frustrated, especially as the heat goes up. People want to get home.
I feel like there's less people cutting through than when the bridge was open, because that exit off of 287 to go to BC Rome, it would get backed up, and so people would just cut through. And then that's when I saw all the traffic, or a lot more traffic. I don't know. I feel like it's gone down a little bit since the bridge closed. I don't know.
I think y'all are exactly right. I was surprised at the lack of numbers increasing and the cut through traffic. I expected more cars. What I have noticed, I didn't do a survey, but this is more anecdotal. I noticed that a lot of cars now continue north on Main Street to Pioneer. They don't come through town. And in fact, even working at the PD, when I leave and I want to go south on 287 and 114, oftentimes I just turn left and go that way, back north to Pioneer Road and then across the highway. It's faster, and a lot of people are figuring that out.
Thank you so much. And I think that was the recommendation TxDOT sent to all the neighbors, to everyone, was to go that way down to Pioneer.
And in keeping with notification from the police department as it relates to traffic, we were notified that the 407 exit southbound off 287 is closed, which is going to force more down into Rome. And I don't know what council's appetite is, but I'm always amazed at TxDOT's lack of notification. And it might be something that we would want to consider sending to our elected officials, both local and state, just expressing the displeasure of council if you are interested in that lack of notification. I do not understand why it's difficult to notify city staff a couple of days before it's going to happen. If they would give us some ability to have a couple of weeks, we could prep people and we could help them spread their messaging. But this is a consistent issue, and I don't know how else to address it with TxDOT because I don't get anywhere. But if council wanted to consider a letter, much like we did for the Bywell light, that might be something that we could at least express our displeasure. We met with someone from Senator Cruz's office about some issues we had with traffic, and they were helpful with us. But it's just something for council to consider.
I think that's an excellent idea, actually.
think they need to put a stop sign down there, down your road. People coming off the service road back up to it, making the left and going over the bridge. People coming over the bridge, nobody will yield to them when they go home. So that's something you might check with TxDOT on.
I think there was a very bad accident there a week or so ago.
Yep.
I don't know why.
Just pull it real close to you. We have,
I think there
again,
was a very bad accident over there at 287 and Pioneer Road about a week ago. So I
I
think that
think
would
you're
help.
correct. Yes.
Stop sign. And we had positive, well, I felt like it was positive. It was at least something from TxDOT with the letter that we sent from
Correct.
Bywell
Yeah.
saying that they would move the light at Bywell up to this fall.
Mhm. I think when it's all of you together and we reach out through multiple different channels, not just state representatives, but I'd like to talk to Judge Clark and see what he can do to help potentially with this, because this is a pervasive issue within TxDOT. And quite frankly, I don't have any idea what it takes to run that organization. It's very large and they have a lot of moving parts. But there's just some common sense things in customer service that I think we could be of assistance if they would just focus on some of those frustrations that their customers have.
Yes, I would like to direct you to possibly start on some sort of letter to them for us to look at
I will get that put
whenever
together.
you're not busy.
Like do it tomorrow.
I'll see what I can do there.
All right.
Well, we know you won't be busy.
Yeah.
Nothing heard?
Free 3 to 5 at most, yes. Thank you, Mayor. So one of the things that we recently had a visit from a gentleman who is with Verisic, I think that's how you pronounce his business, and he came in and did the preliminary questioning of staff on a variety of topics as it relates to our application of building regulations and building codes and all of those subsets therein, as that has an impact on our ISO rating for the city. So every 3 years they update those international code council manuals that you see there in your agenda commentary. The last time we adopted was in 2018 for building, energy, fire, mechanical, residential, and plumbing, and we are currently using 2017 electrical code. So one of the things that we need to do is have this adopted and have this moved through at your next meeting in order to meet one of the large scoring criterias as it relates to your ISO rating for the city of Rome. So I'd like to gain direction from council if that is something that you are interested in doing. There may be a cost as far as having someone analyze the changes from the 18 and 17 manuals to the 2021 manuals, because we will have to update our code correspondingly. But given the move that I've seen other communities have to make, and their ISO rating is going as high as a 9, which is not, we don't want to be there if we can avoid that, because it does affect insurance rates for our residents. We want to make sure that we are being proactive and providing all of the public safety and building code compliance issues that affect that rating. So this would be something I'd like to see us move to the front of our list and see if we can't get this approved by council at a July 11th meeting.
No, can't we just adopt those what do they call it, International Code Council manuals and not have to go through the whole?
So we did find a document that gives us the high points of the changes from 18 and 17 coming forward to 2021. So I'd want to work with Ross Inspection Services, who is our code compliance officer, or building official, if you will, and make sure that we have done crossed all of our T's and dotted all of our I's. But yes, I believe you can just adopt these, and then we can update our codes correspondingly from there. So I would prepare an ordinance with that synopsis of those changes and bring it to you at your meeting on the 11th.
I think we need to get them updated. So yeah.
And it's something we need to put in our regular cycle of business so that we're not behind the curve in getting this completed the next time around. So we'll put this in kind of our standard operating practices, if you will. And I think just in the change in city administration, I think this just kind of got set by the wayside. And I was grateful that this gentleman came in and he spent a considerable amount of time with Julie going through a bunch of information, and she answered a plethora of questions from him. And he gave us this information and said, you need to have this done by X date. And so if we have it adopted on the 11th, we've met that time frame, and therefore we'll still get the points on our ISO rating that we're hoping to get based on adopting these codes.
I move to direct staff to update the relative codes for the city of Rome.
I'll second. We have a motion.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Moving on.
Now, what are you saying when you say groups? Because I mean, people use the parks. Are they going to have to all go to City Hall and do whatever?
That's why.
Well, if that's the case, if they need to schedule something that's saying that they're using it on that day, then they need to do that because no one else can, if they're using it, then no one else can schedule a time to go to the park either because these people are using it and the city doesn't know. Or there could be double booked or, whatever because they're not saying anything.
I think it's also important to think about the image and the partnership that we want to have, that the city wants to have with different organizations. And so for us to be able to support, for us to provide support with um, restrooms and cleanup if needed. And what if the electrical is not working over there and they have a mic system? Like, how can we help them partner with them? I think I would like to see that as the message as opposed to you didn't pay the fee.
And there's the third.
No, I do think that they need to let the city know it's a city park and they're booking that whole facility, or they're not even booking it. They're using that whole facility and no one else can book it.
So they were built and put in by taxpayers' money, right? So you're saying now, in order for little Johnny Smith to go down here and have a birthday party, he's
If I could frame this just a little bit to make kind of bring all of your voices together, it's not unusual for a city to have a facility use or park use policy. The council can then set applicable fees or no fees for a particular group. For instance, if they are a certified or a accepted partner with the city of Rome, much like the Rome veterans may be, then they may not be required to pay a fee, but they would need to at least give the city notification that they intend to have exclusive use of that veterans park for that day. It also gives us the opportunity to schedule so that we know staff can attend or council may want to attend, and I can post notice of a potential quorum so that you all can be in presence at that event. So those type of things, as the city continues to grow and either as our park systems expand, we'll want to make sure that we have those policies in place that staff can use. I've even had calls recently, people have called wanting to use this community center for a variety of things. I had a gentleman call, his mother had moved here from the north. She had a seniors type gathering place where they played cards and bingo, and that he wanted to know could they rent this room. We don't have a policy that directs staff on that, and a fee may not be applicable, but when someone is asking for exclusive use of a city facility, we have to know that they're there so that our insurance we have some coverage with our insurance, or they have coverage depending upon what type of use they're using it for. And if, say, they were going to come in and use this facility, we would need to know, because we might want staff on hand as a liaison, because we have electronic equipment in this room and we want to make sure that we keep it in good working order. So I think what the mayor's looking for is a broad policy that would set us up for the future, because as more people move in, they are going to want to know what type of city facilities, not just parks, but buildings too, could be used for whatever event they want to host. If someone is just a family and they're going down to the park, like you were talking about, Mr. Johnson, and it's someone's birthday, then no, they don't have an obligation to contact the city. They just go to the park and they use it. But if they want to rent out the pavilion, yes, they need to let us know, because we send staff over, we clean the restrooms, we open those, we make sure that the pavilion's in working order, and so we have to know to get that done. To Mrs. King's point, I have long wanted to see an enhanced relationship between some of our organizations that exist within Rome, including the Rome veterans, to see how we can partner with them. We talked about this briefly with the volunteer group who does the Easter egg hunt earlier this year. So if we could start to harness all of that positive energy from the volunteers, from the Rome veterans, etc., then we can create a cohesive city unit and be a more cohesive city in putting these events on. We can help publicize these things. We can have city staff on hand to be a part of it. It was my understanding that there was some expectation that staff and council were going to be at that Memorial Day event, but we did not receive any notification that it was going on. So I didn't know we needed to be there. So that's what I'm hoping for as we go through this process. I think that would really help knit the community together and provide some of those activities and be a unifying policy, if you will, for the entirety of Rome.
I just didn't want to see family members
Oh, no.
using the park
Right.
have to notify everybody
No.
and pay a fee.
No.
I understand about the electrical and the water and stuff. I get it. But just the park, I was like,
No,
I'm
no,
on
that's not
board.
the case.
That's part of the reason why we need a clear policy that everybody can see and say, here's the rules. And everybody knows them so that there's not any ambiguity.
And if we take this past just the current two parks that we have, I've mentioned to you all that there are other developments that are coming in or wanting to come into Rome. One that I've been talking about is in discussion of an additional 30 acres to our park system. We've got to have some sort of underlying policy from which I can administer how do we want to have that used and how do we want to make sure that we are protecting everyone's rights and making sure that residents have access if they'd like to have exclusive use, or if we're going to have ball fields, how do we allocate those out, et cetera. And so as we continue to grow, this would be a foundational policy document that council would put out.
I get it. I understand it now. I thought it was just a blanket thing. And I'm like, no. Taxpayers already paid for it. Why they have to pay again?
Right.
Electrical, water, I get it.
Yeah. One of the other things that we've talked about in light of the parks is hopefully resurrecting the Parks Committee. That would be a wonderful thing for Rome, and see if we've had one person who has recently applied, and I'm hopeful to get them appointed at your July 11th meeting, because I'd like to see how we can do some of the things that they do in Newark. We're not prepared for that depth of events, but something along those lines, so that we can start to nurture that side of what the city would like to be and what we'd like to grow into.
But I think the policy is a good idea. I still would like for you to put something in there saying that, kind of along the lines of if you help with
Absolutely.
assist
correct.
with cleaning up the parks
Mhm.
and things like that, then we could waive the fees. Yeah.
Mhm.
Something.
We
I
can
don't-
certainly do that.
I make a motion to direct staff. I'm sorry. You ready for a motion, Mayor?
Yes, please.
My apologies. I motion to direct city staff to draft policy for use of the parks.
We have a second. Second. Motion and a second. Place, we'll go to a vote. Place 1.
Aye.
2.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
And 5. Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Moving on to the third item on the agenda, financial policy. Amanda, I believe this one is yours.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. Council, you may recall that you've seen these before a couple of months ago. I brought these to you as part of the initial discussion in prepping for our budget this year. And so I took the policy document, or excuse me, the fiscal and budgetary policies that I had presented to you all that was highlighted yellow, and I crafted some questions in your agenda commentary that I would like to get some direction from, because those are really, in my opinion, the last pieces that we need to put together in order to adopt this administrative guidelines, if you will, as it relates to being good stewards with the city's funds, both investment-wise, budgetarily-wise, etc. This is a comprehensive document that I pulled from a multitude of cities and then crafted it specifically for Rome based on things that we have within our city that other cities may have that we don't. So I removed some of that information. I've added policies and practices as it relates to exactly what the city of Rome is doing. So I'd like to, if you don't mind, go through these questions and gain some feedback from you all so that I can further finesse these documents as we go through. So if you will look on page 1 of your fiscal and budgetary policy document, Mrs. Ties, yours should be online. Everyone else has a printed copy at their place. You'll see at the bottom of that page, highlighted yellow, is a statement that says solid waste, trash, refuse function will have rates that fully recover all costs and maintain an adequate balance. So enterprise fund rates, you will recall, such as the utility fund and your trash fund, are meant to be full cost recovery. General fund or utility fund should not be subsidizing that, and it's based on users. So you only pay the fee if you've subscribed to trash, and it has to pay for itself. And currently it does that. We don't have an issue. It's sometimes pretty tight some years if we have some unexpected expenses come up. But so far we've always had revenue slightly exceed the expenditures as it relates to trash and pickup and other things. But if you are interested in containing this statement in your policies, one, I need to have that direction because it's not a necessity. An enterprise fund by definition is meant to be self-sustaining, but it is called out in this document since we don't directly provide for our trash pickup. This is something that we could use with vendors whenever we're having conversations with them to say, this is council's direction that you provide this service to the city. It is meant to be full cost recovery with a slight balance in case we have unexpected costs come up throughout the year. So the question on this one would be, are you interested in having this statement in your financial policy?
I don't see that there's a problem with leaving it.
It's a new statement?
No.
No.
Well, we've not had policies this comprehensive before. This has been a practice that we've done, but it hasn't been in written form prior to this.
So, yeah, I think it clarifies, and I think it kind of speaks to that whole issue that we've had
Right.
of never raising rates and then not recouping.
Right. Any other questions? Okay, so then looking on page 2, if you will turn to this, this is in some cities, under item E, general administrative charges, where feasible can be charged out to each department. This would really only apply currently in administration because we have municipal court, we have utility billing, and we have finances, city secretary, etc., all housed under one roof and all contained within one function within the budget. Currently, we take say for instance on the copy machine, we take the cost of that and we divide it out amongst the departments that are in there. I would recommend to council, and the way this is written, is that we continue down that path instead of in the municipal court we have a line item for printing. In utility fund we have a line item for printing. In city secretary, that just creates additional layers of accounting and bureaucracy that is not necessarily needed. However, in larger cities, that is customarily done, where those general overhead charges are charged out to each department. If we ever get in a position where we are all contained within one building, we may want to consider setting up a separate fund, which is considered administrative overhead or costs, and allocating things like electricity and water, etc., to all of those charges to one fund instead of breaking it out amongst each department. But we're not that large yet, and we're not certainly contained within one building. So the way this is written reflects the current procedures, where we will take a consolidated cost like printing or paper or cleaning supplies, and at least in the city hall we break it out amongst each department and we just divide it equally in thirds. If that's still the direction that council wants to go, then we can update this to make sure that we are reflecting that. Just basically telling you there are options out there from that standpoint.
Keep it simple.
Okay. Then looking at number 3 on page 5, there is a statement in here that talks about the compensation plan and setting some direction for the current city administration and anyone who comes thereafter, that says the city will also work to, and it should say, to set a goal for employees to be paid at a level that is within 3% of the median of the surveyed benchmark municipalities. We're not there yet. And one of the things that I have talked to you about is we don't even have the funds to get there yet. So you will see that the next sentence says any adjustments to the overall compensation plan will be reviewed by council each year during the budget process and is subject to available funding. So it gives your city administrative staff, your city manager, a path forward from which I'm supposed to be looking. But it's very clear that if general fund or utility fund does not have the revenue to support it and there are other needs, we're going to have to delay some of those moves in salary until we are in a different financial position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that having a goal for that is perfect, and it also explains why we might not be at that goal.
And This is customary as well, and several compensation plans for municipalities, even compensation plans within private business, they have a goal that they're trying to set so that they make sure that they are retaining employees as they would like to do. Our current staff, we have some that are still at the low end of their salary scale. We have some that are just above that, but we don't have anybody who's just way above midpoint. So you will see all of that information as well in the updated or the aged forward salary information that I bring you as it relates to your budget. I hope to have some first pass of this information for you all at your July 11th meeting. You'll recall we had a budget workshop where we went over all of the finances from a very high level. Now we'll start getting more granular into the budget document itself, and you will see in those pay scale analysis, if you will, where everyone sits, and you will see that we're not here yet, but we will shoot for that over the years. And you always put that statement in there that it is subject to the budgetary allocations, because you may not have that much. You can't back the city into a position where they absolutely have to move everyone to within 3% of the midpoint and you don't have the funds from which to do it. Does that make sense?
Yes, my only question would be, there's two different things. So the salary survey in the paragraph right above is conducted every 2 years at minimum with the identified municipalities.
Correct.
But then it says that council will review the overall compensation plan yearly.
So in the budget each year, I will age it forward 2%, just so that, because that's a general move for a lot of municipalities in and amongst themselves. So rather than regathering the data every single year, because it takes a while, in that off year, I age it 2% and estimate that information. And then the next year we'll do a full survey in and of itself. So each year with the budget, council has the ability to review anything as it relates to compensation and approve or adjust it based on that. So it doesn't bind you all to anything just based on the fact that we may not have the finances, but it gives your administrative staff and your current and future city managers something from which to work with.
Forward thinking.
So if you will then look further down on page 5 under general fund balance, this is something that we've discussed in the last couple of our budget years, and a lot of cities maintain a 90-day minimum balance of unreserved or undesignated capital within their general fund. And you will see the enterprise fund or utility fund mirrors that same information. It would be my recommendation to us that we set that at 120 days, given the fact that we do not have the diversification within our tax base from which 90 days makes me feel comfortable. So when you're a larger city like the city of Fort Worth or Southlake or Grapevine or Roanoke or some of those, you have a greater diversification of that tax base and multiple sources of revenue that are coming in. So 90 days is not such an issue for you to have as undesignated fund balance. For my previous city, we recommended 180, which would be 6 months, and the council set on 4 months, I believe, if I recall correctly. So you all can choose to set it at anywhere from 90 to whatever you want to set it at. The last time I checked our fund balance days, we had a couple of 100 days worth of fund balance, over 200. And with the completion of the FY23 audit, we will have, again, an updated set of numbers as it relates to how much money we have in reserve, which will give us some direction on what council may want to pay cash for in this coming budget year, especially as it relates to either equipment purchases or repair to some of our water systems, etc. Typically, that ought to come out of your enterprise fund for utility, but we do not have that depth in that one. So we'll have to look at it. But I would recommend to you all that we set no less than 120 days in reserve. I would feel better at 4 months, but that's certainly a council decision.
Just remember, we do have a lot of repairs to infrastructure yet to go that are not covered by the bond package, mainly with our water system. So that if something goes wrong with that water system, we definitely need a cushion to prepare for that. Because remember, there are no backup pumps on some of those well sites. There's no backup generators. And if something goes down, we got to be able to meet that need.
And I'm very fiscally conservative, and I like to keep extra money in the bank just in case. So the least I would recommend to you is 120, but I wanted you to know that a lot of cities will set it at 90. So I just need some direction from council as to what number, how many months would you like to have in reserve?
I say 120.
For, thank you. So I will set that both for general fund and utility fund. The next or last item on this document as it relates to debt management, which I apologize, I did not put the page number, but it's page 7 of your document. One of the things that we'd like to get set in guidelines, if you will, is what direction you want to give to your financial advisors as it relates to refunding of bonds. So generally it's set, a good rule of thumb is a 3.5% reduction or gain in the refunded maturities. Your financial advisors team, both your bond attorney and your FA, your financial advisor team through Hilltop Financial, watch this routinely, and they will contact me if they notice that any of our bonds have a higher interest rate and we can refund them for a lower interest rate. Now, there are costs to refund bonds, so you want to make sure that you have enough of a reduction that you're not refinancing something and not recouping your costs for that. So this is the other thing that I wanted to make sure that you all were aware of in here, because it provides just a general that it should exceed 3.5%. It may exceed it more than that, but it should never be less than 3.5%. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware, because this is a long document and most of this is fairly perfunctory or very industry standard, if you will, but I've wanted to highlight the points that make sure you're aware of what we're putting forward. Any concerns there? So we're very fortunate to have a financial advisor team that watches over those bonds for us and that provides that advising for us. And I've spent a considerable amount of time on the phone with our bond counsel as it relates to the issuance of the bonds that are coming up. Mr. Dransfield is very skilled and knowledgeable. I had not worked with him prior to coming to Rome, but I'm very impressed with his abilities. So I am grateful to have his assistance in this role. So I will update the document based on that direction from council. There is a motion. You will notice that in your agenda commentary, in order to make this a little easier for you, we're trying to bring this so that you don't have to try and craft it out of just general discussion. So if you are interested, you can make that motion that basically says the following changes, which are in your agenda commentary, will be made. If anyone's interested in making such a motion.
We're ready for that now.
I make a motion to direct staff to make the changes within the agenda and the agenda commentary and bring the policy back in ordinance form for council review or approval.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second. Place 1.
Aye.
2.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mayor. This is an item that I've been in conversation, or email conversation, I should say, with Mr. McClure and I believe Miss Sarah Stewart from Northwest ISD as it relates to the categorization of an elementary school as a commercial building and their request for council to consider a reduction in the building permit fee. You do have in front of you, I prepared some documents so that you all would have some understanding of what you might be looking at. Yes, sir. I just think I've given my copy away. Sir. So you will see the first page that you have is just a general spreadsheet of the information with some calculations that may help council in their decision. The second sheet that you have contained is an excerpt of your commercial construction and how that fee is derived. You also have a copy of the initial building permit that they filed and then the building permit that was actually approved for the grading of the site. So to try and boil this down as best as I can, the valuation of the building for the school is just over $52 million in construction costs and value that will be put into that particular site. And when you calculate it according to the commercial rates for the city of Rome, the building permit comes out to be $278,578. As of now, they have paid $170 for a residential grading fee because we do not have a commercial grading fee. Generally, when you go through a commercial review, and I understand that a school is a little bit of a different animal from a straight commercial building like QT, the fee is just paid and the grading permit is contained therein. So when they asked staff if we could separate the grading permit in order to bring this forward to council for review, the only number we had to fall back on was the residential number. So $170 has been paid. They have started grading, and I will say I went by the site today and had some feedback from staff that they have graded and they have exceeded their building permit authority. There are concrete trucks that have been on that site. There are, looks like, I don't know how to categorize it other than large tunnel
Trench box.
trench boxes and other tubing that's being installed over there, and it looks like piers being dug. So we have an issue in that the school does not have authority to begin construction, but it looks like that's a possibility. So hopefully they can address that today. One of the things that they asked me to consider or to discuss with them is the fact that several cities, when they have come forward and put new schools in the area, like the city of Fort Worth, Justin, Northlake, and I believe Hazlitt, they have discounted their building permits considerably for a school. I would argue to council that we are not Northlake, Fort Worth, or Justin. We have to contract out everything we do construction-wise, from building official to inspections. The only thing that we're doing in-house at the moment is some public works plan review and some fire plan review. The rest of it is through Kimley Horn, which costs money. So anything that is allocated in that building permit, it's not kept by the city. It's turned back out to those third-party folks. So I'm happy to answer any questions that council has. I believe there are some representatives. Mr. Barkes is here on the variance for the lights, and there are two other folks, I think, from Northwest, for sure one from the shirt they're wearing, that might be able to shed some light on any questions that council has. I also do have emails where we have notified the construction manager that council was going to be considering the fee reduction tonight and that they should not have been on site doing any construction. So I'm a little disappointed, frankly, because I thought we were negotiating in good faith and that this was this was clearly understood. But there is a considerable amount of work being done on that site today.
Without a permit approved. Let's just make sure that's clear for the building.
Tommy, do you want to speak to any of this?
Yes, please.
My name's Tommy Osborne. I'm the Executive Director of Construction for Northwest ISD. When we initially got the building permit fee, which was significantly higher than some of the surrounding municipalities, we did reach out to the city and request a lower fee. We are a taxing entity, just like the city of Rome. We are not a commercial property and don't feel like we should be categorized that way. Some of the other cities did reach out to their third-party vendors because they reach out. They also third-party a lot of those services as well, and they were able to reduce those fees. We have tried many times to expedite this process in order for us to stay on schedule and get this school open for the fall. We had to continue. Yes, we have drill piers out there, but we have again, as I said, we have tried to expedite this as much as possible, but we're told that this would have to go before the council on this date. If we had waited, we would not have this school open for the fall. So that was the decision that my boss made, and so that's how we proceeded.
And I will say that in doing some research, there are penalties associated with entities who proceed without a building permit, and that will be at council's discretion. I've been told it's as high as double the building permit fee and as low as $2,000 a day per violation. So that's something that council may or may not want to take into consideration in these discussions, but in my conversations with the school district, I was also very clear that I did not have authority to lower that, and I know that the other cities that they worked with also had to take those requests to council. And just given the fact that you only meet twice a month, and we did have several things coming up in between, this was the earliest I could get it on your calendar.
You mentioned you had to get this done before so you can meet your construction timeline.
Yes, sir.
Did you guys notify anybody in the city about this to get this expedited or something?
Oh, yes, sir, absolutely. And we even offered to pay a good faith fee of whatever the city would entertain, $20,000, $30,000, as a show of good faith that we will pay the building permit fee once that fee has been agreed upon.
Okay.
So they did reach out to me, and I have been in contact with them, being clear that that's not an authority that rests with the city manager. These are fees established in our fee schedule, and there is no categorization for elementary schools or any school. So this will come up again in the future. That is something we may want to address so that there is that categorization. I can't find it in a lot of other cities. I do know I reached out to my counterpart in Justin, and they did mention that they were able to negotiate some lower fees, and they did discount their fee 70% on behalf of the school district. I did find the city of Grapevine discounts their 75%. We don't have that depth to do, and if the council wants to make that decision, that's definitely within your decision realm to make, but we will be subsidizing that project because we will be paying out for third-party inspectors and others for all of that work that's going to have to be done.
So I guess that's the question that I have. What exactly are the fees that the third parties are going to charge us? And so I don't know that. We don't know that.
So, for instance, on Ross inspection, currently the permit plan review is 65% of the building permit. So you can calculate out that whatever you reduce it to, about 65% of that's going to go out the door to third parties. Now, if I reach out to them and see if they will consider a reduction, I can certainly do that, but it's going to further delay your decision, and then council is going to have to make a choice as to whether or not you all find there's an issue with them going ahead and starting construction before having their building permit issued. Because every day that this continues, and at this point it's been 11 days that I know of that they've been out there exceeding their authority, if you will. If this was a traditional city and we had building inspectors or code enforcement, red tags would have been issued and the project would have been shut down.
A decision needs to be made today.
Well, I don't see, I mean, we've had lots of talk about our finances and what we're able to do for the city and for the community and what we're unable to do at this time. I don't see how we can discount something that we don't know if our rates are going to be discounted.
Just remember, council knows that Rome has got possibly the lowest tax rate of any municipality around us, and we're not just flush with money, and we're trying to act in good faith for our taxpayers. So whatever you guys decide is what we're going to go with. We owe this man an answer.
So in your initial document, I did provide some calculations for council if you all want to make any consideration at a 25, a 50, and a 75% discount. I will tell you that at the 75% discount, we will be paying for that school to come into this city. We cannot financially sustain that deep of a discount on this building permit, just knowing what I do about the third-party costs and the 65% that's going to come off the top and go to those folks who are going to do Kimley Horn, Ross inspections, etc.
So you're saying 65%, but if we discount it 50%, is that 65% of 50%, or how
Yes.
does that work?
Yeah.
So they're okay.
So is there any way we can give no discount until after it's done and see what our cost is and then work off of that?
I don't know that the school would be interested in that particular situation. I know that we had discussions about them being delayed and their potential opening date, and this was of great concern to them. But again, I explained I don't have the authority to make that decision. That's why I've provided you the information and the background from what I know, and council needs to give us direction either tonight or at your next meeting on July 11th. But if you wait until July 11th and they continue to work, which I imagine they will, you're going to have to deal with the fact that they're out there without a building permit and no inspections are being done at this time.
Well, that's it. Like, there's no repercussions for this then.
Well, there are. I mean, you can assess a penalty, is my understanding.
Well, I
Both
would,
of these penalties were up to $2,000 a day.
well, I would think if we're going to assess penalties, we might as well just not discount the permit and it would be a wash.
That's what I was fixing to suggest. I mean, they come to us wanting something, but yet they wouldn't provide a hold until we had a chance to look at it.
They
so-
offered to pay $50,000. Chief Deba spoke with Mr. McClure, I believe, about that. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And we declined to take that check because we don't want to be in a position where we are operating from an angle that either council reduces it below that or requests it higher than that. And knowing that we were coming to you on Thursday, the information that we sent to him, there was some concern with the city, or the school's offices closing for a certain period of time, and they wanted to make sure there was a decision so that they could start work tomorrow, I believe is what was discussed. Is that correct, Chief?
This might be a question for Carbon, but what liability does the city have now that we know they're operating without any inspection? Is there
Your
something
ordinance,
were to happen?
your ordinance calls for $2,000 a day fine penalty for that, for being in violation.
But that's minimal, right? That's the minimum.
Well, I pulled the ordinance. The last time we updated these fees was back in 2020. At least that had to do with this particular section, and the penalty is shall not be fined more than 2,000. So that's the maximum amount.
And if I could interject, we have a third-party inspector as well as our structural engineer that comes out and has been coming out. We have reports from our third-party inspectors. We have documentation. We have photographs, which we are more than happy to share with the city. So all our peers are being inspected. All our work is being inspected.
And I understand that, Mr. Osborne. I'm concerned that we'd had conversations with the school district about this in the timeline, and they were disregarded.
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
That frustrates me considerably because I don't feel like that the city's interests were taken into account at all, and we have been as accommodating as possible given when this council meets.
It was done without anybody's knowledge. I mean, they knew what this was up front. And we didn't, the fee schedule was made known up front, and the rules were made known up front. So that's going to be you guys' decision, but we owe him a decision.
I say leave it as is.
We through with discussion, or are we moving to motions?
Motions, I guess.
All right. Do we have a motion to keep fee schedule set as is?
I make a motion to set the building permit fee at the current amount for the construction of the Prairie View Elementary School project.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Move to a vote. Council, place 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
and 5. Aye. Let's vote.
Thank you, Mayor.
May I ask a question? Well, our offices are closed, so even if we were to be allowed to continue, we will not be able to cut this check for another at least 2 weeks. So are we allowed to continue to do work, or do we have to stop?
Was that your understanding, Chief, that they were closed now?
Yes, ma'am. Today was our last day for the 4th of July break.
So Tommy, y'all come back the Monday following 4th of July week.
The 8th is our
The
first day back, but our financial system has
Would it
locked
take a
us
week?
out until the 11th.
Does council wants to set a due date for the check?
Would we, if we agree to give them the time to bring us the check to get, and to approve this building permit in lieu of the check, you should set a date, and if that date is passed, then you can reinstate the fine.
What's the date that you said would open
Well,
back
we're
up?
locked out until July 11th. Ma'am, I'm a construction guy. I don't deal with
I can
finances,
kind of speak to this.
yeah,
So
Christy probably has
so typically in the middle of the school year, you're changing budgets from the 23-24 school year to the 24-25 school year budget, and that rollover happens in July. And so they will not be able to cut a check until they get back in. They make sure that all their systems are up to date with the new budget, and then they can start processing those accounts.
So do you have a date that you would?
I would say it would be reasonable. I would say July 18th. They don't work on Fridays in the summer. July 18th. It hasn't been that long. That would be my recommendation.
So
So is that what council wishes to move
That's,
forward?
that's
that
10
deadline?
days past their coming back. You said they come back on the 8th.
Yes, sir.
So that gives them 10 days. I think it's fair.
And they can. Okay, I
That
just want to
seems
make sure that's
reasonable to me as well. I
So
appreciate
we're looking at July the 18th to have the fees paid, or we will issue the permit before then.
Yes.
Okay, and anything after the 18th will be, the fines will be assessed retroactively back to this date. Good, thank you.
Okay, and they're clear to work. Clear to work
We'll get them the
between now and
permit
then.
cut.
Okay.
it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, moving on to agenda number 5. A variance request for one tract legally described as acres A554J Moffett 39.06 acres, also described as located 609 FM 3433 Rome, Texas. I believe this is the variance.
Thank you, Mayor. We did discuss this at the last meeting, and Mr. Varghese is here to represent the school district as this project continues. If you'll recall, the discussion piece was for 2 variances, one for the lights to actually be at 25 feet in height, which exceeds our current standards by 10 feet, as well as to upgrade the ICC codes to 2014 from for tornado shelters, which is apparently the most current code for that. I do know that schools have to meet a more stringent safety level for schools because the children are involved. So I think, in my opinion to you all, that one is a very clear-cut decision. And the one on the lights, on the height, seems to be giving us the most pause, if you will. But I just want to remind council that the only thing we're here to talk about tonight is the variance on the height. I know that there's been discussion on shielding and where they're going to be placed, and that might be something that Northwest would be willing to come back and talk to you all about at a later time, but the only thing on your agenda is the height from that standpoint.
So we're not talking about the storm shelter?
Well, you certainly can.
I didn't.
So
I
there's 2
missed what that
variances
was.
on here, and you can certainly talk about any of them, but if they're wanting to use the latest standards for the storm shelters, I would say that would be an easy choice for council, but that's up to you. If you want to talk to it about it, it's absolutely on the agenda for tonight.
I do have a question. So Tommy, will there be a storm shelter in this building? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ms. King, absolutely. We do have a storm shelter in this elementary prototype. This variance is really how the systems internally operate. It's mechanical. That's it.
Is there any other discussion for the storm shelter? Well,
No.
okay, we're moving on to the lighting?
I do know that members of our community and members of the Chisholm neighborhood had reached out to Mr. McClure and asked some more questions about the lighting. He did confirm what, I'm sorry, I can't recall your name. He did confirm what Philip said was that he anticipated that there would be motion detectors, and I think you talked to Sarah that night, and the lights would run or they would go off at 6 a.m. Wait, the lights come on dusk to dawn, but then they go off at 10 p.m. and then only come on with the motion sensor. So I just want council to be aware of that. So I think as far as the light itself, but then we're just dealing with the height.
And the only problem I have with the height is just, is it going to affect the residents that live around there? That's all I'm worried about.
I think with the shielding, the positioning, I think we're good. So
Yeah, I might interject for council. If you look at the school now, existing lighting is at the variance requested height. A lot of it, I'm sure, is due for truck passage through there. A low light probably get knocked over, and it would all look uniform. As long as they've already agreed to address the concerns that people had about light pollution, and if council's okay with that, I'm not sure they're asking for anything unreasonable.
I don't see where that motion is. Are you ready for a motion?
Yes, I am, if we're through with discussion. I just want to give you all time to talk about it, because I knew that we had a lot of discussion last time.
I move to approve the variances described for the lighting, the height of the lighting, and then maybe a storm shelter. I don't know. Yes, variance for a storm shelter.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, move to a vote. Place
Aye.
1. Aye. 2.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
And 5.
Thank you.
Thank you, Northwest, for your patience with us on this light business.
That is correct.
I would like to add community lunches for seniors to the agenda. Community lunches for senior citizens on the agenda. I don't know. I just want us to talk about it.
Thank you. If I could ask for some clarity, Mayor, Mrs. King, would this be fine for the second meeting in July? The first one's pretty full.
Absolutely. No
Thank you.
hurry.
We'll be pretty busy. We got a lot of budget. If there's no more future agenda items, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you all.